We'd like to first of all welcome Torah Anytime again to our Tuesday night class. Again, first of all, we have to thank Beit Juhuro for hosting us every Tuesday night at 630 Avenue S in Brooklyn, New York. 11 whatever, and it's everyone's welcome to join. In Tuesday night at 8 p.m. there is a class for men and women, whoever wants to come, and Wednesday night we also have a class at 8 p.m. in Russian. So for all the Russian-speaking crowd, please join us. So we want to recap. Last week we spoke about success in life and about happiness. So we want to first of all understand. This is what we went through. Let's do a little bit of a recap. We spoke about that. Success, right? What does everybody want in life? And we spoke about many people want money, many people want to get married, many people want, certain things, X, Y, and Z. But now if we go a step further and we say, okay, why do people want money? Why do people want marriage? Why do people want kids? It all leads to one thing, and that's happiness. Everybody's ultimate goal, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, is happiness. Which means is they might strive for a higher education or for whatever it is that they decide that they want. At the end of the day, it is for their own happiness. So now, if we just equated success to happiness, then we also spoke about last week, how come no one's happy? No one's happy in the world, right? We spoke about how there's so many prescriptions for antidepressants going on. What's going on in this world? If the main thing that we strive for is happiness, how come we're all failing terribly at it? Right? So we spoke about a few things. We spoke about gratitude. The more grateful you are, the more of a happier person you're going to be. We also spoke about kindness, which we'll also speak about, we'll continue with a little bit about today, and then we'll go on to more steps, practical steps of what you can each do that the Torah says, and we're going to plug in science also, that will make you a happier and hence a more successful person. So before we begin, I want to start with a fascinating story that I read recently. There was once a person by the name of, let's call him Sam. And Sam had a very close friend, and his name was Max. And they were very, very close with each other. They went to nursery together, and they lived in the same block. And they went to elementary school together, and they went to high school together. There's a true story happened in Israel. And they were best friends. Chavutas, everything was going excellent. When they got of age, Sam got married first, and then 3 months later, Max got married. Within 1 year after Sam got married, he had a baby boy, and then shortly afterwards, his friend Max also had a baby boy, shortly afterwards. And this, as good friends that they were growing up, eventually, both couples were, but the husband and wife both became very close with the other husband and wife. So they, as their kid grew up, as Sam's kid grew up, he became 5 years old, and they decided they're going to send him to it was actually when he was 4. When he was 4, they decided to send him to this amazing preschool. Right? It was an unbelievable, school, hard to get in, and they managed to get it in, so they decided they're going to send him there. The only downside was, it was a little bit far. Since it was a little bit far, so they decided, they have to drive him, he can't walk. So they drove him for 1 year, they drove him to the school. When he became 5, his friend's son, Max's son, also came of age, and they also wanted to put him in the same school. And they happened to get in, and they decided, listen, we're both going there. They both live so far. They've lived very close to each other. They says, let's carpool, right? Like nowadays, everyone does it. They decided, let's carpool. And they decided that they're going to go and they're going to switch off days, which one is going to take both kids. So everything was working beautifully until, what the mother who says the story, it's a true story, the mother says the story, calls it Black Monday. Says one day Sam was always particular when he brought the kids to school. He would always lock one side, which was towards the oncoming traffic. He would always lock it to make sure that no one could go out and none of the kids could get into oncoming traffic. And they all have to go to the side that was closer to the curb. However, Max wasn't so particular about it. So one day he's driving both their kids, his kid and his friend's kid, and he's driving to school, and he just parks, and he says, all right, everyone out. And, the Sam's kid, his name was Shlomi, he said, he just opened the door right next to him. And it just so happened to be, it was in the street. And it says, what happened was his car was speeding by. The second he stepped out, the car hit him. He flew tens of feet in the air. And the mother says the story that he died on the spot. He didn't make it. And, so the mother says the story, there was a funeral, and there was a shiva, but she says that they were all, it was all from, they were in an outside perspective. Like unfortunately, no one should ever know from this, but they couldn't feel like they were in it. They felt like they were observing it from the outside. And they said they took it very, very hard. They didn't take it, there's no way to take it easy, but they took it terribly. And, as his friend, Max came and wanted to pay Shiva call to Sam, and he's like, how do you show your face that because of you, his son died? It's terrible. And finally, after a few days, he said he has to go. He went and he paid a Shiva call to his best friend, who he unfortunately caused this kid to die. And the wife said the story. She says, we weren't sure when the friendship was over, but one thing is for sure: when he left the Shiva house, everybody knew that this friendship was done. They didn't take it well, and it was not. The parents were not very receptive and understanding, and an accent. They didn't take it well at all. And this guy Max, killed. A 5-year-old kid got killed because of him. A person can't sleep with that. A person can't live with that. So he took it very, very hard, and he kept on coming to his friend, Sam, and he kept on begging him. He's like, please, forgive me. I'm sorry. He would wake up early in the morning, go in front of his house, and say, please, I beg of you, forgive me for what I've done. And nothing doing. He would cry, send letters, do everything he could. Finally, Sam got really upset already. He's like, listen, he says, nothing's never going to change. He says, stop coming. I don't want to see you. I don't want to see you ever again. And he said, not only that, he says that every time that I'm near you, I get upset. And every time, he's like, more than that, I can't stay in this neighborhood that much longer. And the wife said the husband was true to his word. 1 month later, they got up and they moved out of the community. And they decided they're going to start new. They went to this new community, and about a year or so later, they were blessed with a child. In the interim, they had 2 twins, and now this is the 3rd child. So they had three kids at this point. And they obviously you can't replace a kid, but they felt like this was a gift from heaven, sort of to ease their suffering. And life goes on, and they continue with babies are going to school and they're getting older, and suddenly one day the wife gets a frantic phone call from somebody in a hospital and says, you have to come, your husband's in the hospital. She comes racing down, and she's told that her husband was he fainted, he passed out in the in work. They brought him into the hospital, and they realized that he has kidney failure. And he needs to go down on dialysis, which means is that every 3 times a week he has to go to a center, and his kidneys doesn't work, so he can't really urinate. So now what they do is they plug someone into this machine for like 4 or 5, 6 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, just to clean out for what all the toxins that usually the kidneys usually do. And she looks at her husband, and he became from used to be like a strong man, he became nothing. He went all the way down. He had to quit his job. He had to go on disability, and he had to he was on dialysis for quite some time. After a few months of him being on dialysis, they get a call from the surgeon, who's in the hospitals, and the nephrologist or whatever was in charge, and he tells them, he said, listen, I need you both to come in here immediately. They both come in, and he says, listen, I was reviewing your husband's paperwork, and it doesn't look good. He's by end-stage renal failure, which means is that he has about 3 months until it becomes terminal, and all systems are shutting down. And they're like, so what are we supposed to do? The only thing you can do right now is really a transplant. And the problem is that he has a very rare blood type, and you need a very specific person with exactly the same blood type to give him the transplant, and that's very hard to come by. So they're like, they're saying like, so what are you telling us? That it's over? And he's like, no, listen, we'll put you on the waiting list, and God willing, pray, do whatever you can, then hopefully we'll be able to get something. So they get home, they're completely, the husband's getting weaker and weaker, the wife is beside herself. She lost her child not too long ago, and now she feels like she's going to lose her husband as well. And she goes and she says, the first thing she does is she opens up the Tehillim Psalms, and she starts reading the entire thing, crying to God, nonstop. And finally she finishes the book once, and she decides she's going to go to the rabbi of the community. And he goes and she basically spills the whole story. She tells him everything from the beginning, about her son that passed away, and now her husband is sick, and it's not looking good, and can you please do something? So the rabbi says, I want you to keep on praying, and says, don't worry, I'm going to go speak to all the biggest rabbis, I'm going to shake the heavens for you. And she felt confident, she felt good, she went home. And she said that day she finished the Tehillim 3 times. Soaked with tears, 3 times the Tehillim she finished. And she said that was her daily routine. Her daily routine was that she would go and she would recite Tehillim. And, after about 2 months after that, she gets a call from the hospital. And the hospital saying that they found a donor, please come in immediately. So they both rush in, and they're doing some testing. It says we have a donor where we think it is a close match. So they start doing all the testing, and they find out that it's exactly the same match, and it's all systems go. So they're very excited, Baruch Hashem, and he goes on to surgery. He goes on the surgery, and Baruch Hashem, the surgery was successful. He bounced back. He was able to, his kidneys his one kidney was working, and things were getting back into normal. And about 6 months passed since the surgery. He starts working again. He starts getting into normal life. And one day he shows up by his wife's work. He calls her from downstairs and he says, "Please come down. I need to speak to you." And she was very nervous. He says her husband never showed up to her work once. And to come in and to say, "I need to speak to you," there must be something going on over here. So, and it can't be good. So she goes down over there and she sees that he's white. He's like white as a horse. She's like, "Is everything okay? Is it your kidneys? Is what's going on?" And he's like, "No, Baruch Hashem, everything's okay. I just, something happened. I need to tell you." So they sit in the car and he starts telling her. He said, "Listen, he says, when I was sick with the kidney failure, I started thinking about, doing cheshbon nefesh, which means retrospection, see how I lived my life." And he says, "It really bothered me how I treated my friend Max. I don't feel like I was right. And, I know he didn't do it, obviously he didn't do it on purpose. So it started bothering me, but every time I would think about him while I was sick," he said, it made me really bitter and really annoyed and really, anxious, so I decided to just push it off. And he says, today I started thinking about it, more. And I said, let me call a mutual friend of ours to see how he's doing. So he calls over his mutual friend, and he's like, and he says, like, while I'm speaking to him, I could see that he never knew that he had any issues with his kidneys. He never, he never put the two and two together. So he says, "Oh, how's Max doing?" And so his friend, the mutual friend, he said, "Listen, Max is, he's doing better. He's recuperating after the surgery, but he's getting better." So the guy stops, like, "What surgery?" He's like, "Oh, right, I forgot you're not in contact with him anymore." So he said, Max, I guess he felt really bad about what happened. So sort of as something, to, pay back God, he felt like he donated his kidney to somebody. And this guy, the phone just dropped. And he picks up the phone. He's like, "Oh, okay, I gotta go. I'll call you right back." He almost fainted, the husband said. And he goes to his wife and he's like, what are we supposed to do? He's like, "How is this possible? How did this happen?" He says, and he says, "You know what? And I feel it that he gave me his kidney." He's like, "I feel it that it's him." And the wife is thinking, and she's like, "You know what?" She starts putting, she's a smart woman, she starts putting two and two together. She says, "You know what? Let's go right now to the rabbi that I spoke to." He goes, both of them show up at the rabbi in the middle of the day. The rabbi opens the door, sees both the husband and wife, both look white, and he realizes something is up. And she's like, "Something happened over here, and we think you were involved with it." And he sits him down and he says, "Yeah, let me explain to you what happened." He says, "When you moved into this neighborhood, your friend Max came into to meet me, and he said, listen, he says, I really felt bad. He told me everything that happened, and he felt terrible, and he really wanted to make it up. And he says, whatever you can do to try to put the two and two together." And so he said, "Listen, I felt you out throughout the years that you were here, and I saw that you weren't ready yet, so I didn't mention anything." He says, "But when your wife came and said that you need a kidney, or otherwise you're not making it past 3 months, I realized it's now or never. Let me call him. Let's see." So I call this guy Max, and when I speak to Max and I tell him about the whole situation, he stops for a second and he says, "I'm a match." And the guy's like, the rabbi says, what do you mean you're a match? It's a very rare blood type, you don't know? He's like, no, I know. He says, when we were younger, we took a CPR course together, and we had to take our blood work, and we both have the same rare blood work. And but the rabbi said, he says, "Listen, I don't think if he tells you that it's his best friend, that killed his son, going to now give you his kidney, I don't think he's going to accept it." So the Max said, he said, "Listen, I don't want him to know. I don't want him to know that I gave him the kidney." He says they went through some organization, which took some time, to sort of keep the donor anonymous, which is it's not unlikely that people do that. So they kept everything anonymous, and the rabbi said, "But now that you came to me and you figured it out, I figured might as well tell you the whole story, and here it is." So the husband and wife froze they sat down. They were completely beside themselves, and they're thinking, and they're like, "You know what? Can you set up a meeting? Can we meet them?" And the rabbi says, "Absolutely. We'll set up a meeting." They set up a meeting to meet in a hotel lobby. And the next day, the husband and wife go to meet, their once best friends, and they see them in the hotel lobby in the distance. So the second that the husbands locked eyes, they dropped everything that they did, and they ran towards each other and embraced each other, and they started crying at each other. And, when the woman saw that, so the woman get, emotionally, clicks on, and they also started crying. They also went and they hugged, and they had an unbelievable, reunion. And, the guy who donated the kidney said, "I'm so, I can't tell you how bad I feel. It's still, the guilt fills me to this day for what happened to your son." And, the other guy, Sam, is saying, listen, I feel bad. I should apologize the way I treated you. I know you didn't do it on purpose. I know it wasn't your fault. And they just kept on, apologizing to each other. And they sort of made up and they became friends again. A short while later, they were talking. The two husbands were talking, and the one that donated the kidney said, you should know, Sam. He says, even if your kid wouldn't have died, I was still giving you my kidney. He says, because you're like a brother to me. And he says, and I would give it to you anyway. And this is what you see, the story of how, people what happens in life and to people's life, and how people take a grudge and they hold it in, and meanwhile their life savior could come from the death of somebody else. People don't understand. People live life and they're assuming that what happens and that's it. If I see that you're not good to me now, I'm never going to deal with you. And people live their life with grudges, and just this brings such a lack of happiness, such a lack of success in life. For what? At the end of the day, you push away people that you love the most. People that care about you the most, you end up pushing away. So, I wanted to start off with an unbelievable story that really should take everybody, inside and look what people do for other people. Right? Not everybody's evil, not everybody's against you, and not everybody's trying to get at you. Now, we spoke last week. We spoke a little bit about kindness. I wanted to bring some. I saw an interesting. I actually saw this today. I saw an interesting study done by Dr. David Hamilton, who a study on what does it do when you do kindness from other people, right? We said the Torah says to give chesed, to do chesed, right? Give charity, do all these things, give money to poor people, help people in need, right? And not only, and we said also last week, who's it better for, the poor person or the rich person? The person who gains more is the one who gives more than the one that receives, right? And now I'm going to show you, so we know that's for sure in the next world. Now I'm going to show you that the person gains more in this world. And listen to this amazing research that I've seen. So, Dr. David Hamilton found 5 things that by doing acts of kindness, it helps you internally. He said, first of all, on a biochemical level, he says that there are certain times when you do something good, you feel good. He says those feeling of good are natural levels of dopamine that are in your body, right? Dopamine, by the way, is also a source of why people take morphine and heroin, right? It's a certain high that you get, right? And as somebody who does kindness, the dopamine levels in his brain that also rise, and hence given this sort of, and it's known in the scientific world as a helper's high. Right? So somebody who helps somebody else feels better inside of him, right? For the same, all the heroin addicts, right? Tell them, hey, forget about the heroin. Just do lots of chesed. Just keep on giving kindness. You'll get your high, right? The number 2, he says, not only that, he says, the acts of kindness, besides getting the dopamine levels, there's also something else that's released, and it's called oxytocin. Oxytocin plays a very significant role in the cardiovascular system. So there's something very interesting. Let me explain it first. So the oxytocin releases something called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide to blood vessel, it expands the blood vessels. So just a very brief idea on how people, I would say, have high blood pressure, right? What does high blood pressure mean? So imagine you have a straw, right? And you have fluid going through the straw. Now, if you pack in more fluid into the straw, that it's going to keep on expanding and stretching, right? It's going to get tight. That pressure is when you have high blood pressure. So that's a pressure that you have. Either your blood vessels are shrinking, or you're getting a lot of whatever fluid in there, and that's why you have high blood pressure. And that's why sometimes when people have high blood pressure, they give you certain pills that make them urinate a lot to sort of release the water to make it not so high pressure. What oxytocin does is it does for the veins and the arteries, it expands them. It expands them. So what happens is in some blood pressure medications, so this is what they do is that if you expand it, then there's less pressure in the vein throughout the circulation. So hence, by doing acts of kindness, it increases your oxytocin level, which increases your nitric oxide levels, which dilates the blood, which helps you internally feel better. Gives you lower blood pressure, it has less of a chance of heart problems or any sort of diseases related to the blood. Which is unbelievable. You're doing chesed and you're gaining for yourself. Whoever thought about this? It's unbelievable. So not only that, there's something else. It helps with aging as well. This is, by the way, secular source. I'm not telling you. The Torah said this a long time ago. It didn't give all the jibber jabber about all the technical terms. But on a biochemical level, there's something very interesting. This for people that age. There's many processes that help someone age, I should say help, but cause a person to age. 2 of them are free radicals and inflammation, right? Just Google free radicals. It's part of chemical bonding that you release it, and then there is extra bonds that don't form, and they cause problems. But whatever it is, these 2 things cause a person to age more. Oxytocin, when it's released, suppresses these 2 things. So hence, by doing chesed, you're releasing oxytocin, and then you're making yourself age slower. Which means you want to age less. You want to keep yourself young. Do kindness. Do chesed. Chesed is going to help you. Besides that, we also know that he also brings out that if you do acts of kindness, it brings a relationship closer together. And I think we spoke about this. Ahava in Hebrew is love. The root of ahava is hav, to give. You want to love somebody, you give them. When you give somebody, you love them more, right? The bond of relationship is closer. So much more so is if, let's say, you give your wife a present. Even though she gains a present, you gain more because you gain that extra bond, that extra connection that you just got. And there's something else that's very interesting. Kindness is contagious. They did a study. This was the New England Journal of Medicine. Right? It reported something crazy, unbelievable. It's hard to believe. They did a study. One 20-year-old person walked into a clinic, donated a kidney. And they followed to see what would happen because of his donation of a kidney. And what they did was they found that it was a ripple effect, or as they call it, a domino effect. That because somebody did a kindness good to them, they felt that they should do a kindness to somebody else. And they followed it through because one person donated a kidney throughout the entire U.S. Because of that, 10 people donated kidneys. 10 people, because somebody, the wife of the person that got the kidney says, listen, this person did this, somebody random, I should really do it for somebody else. And that kept on going for 10 people. Unbelievable. You give somebody a smile, you don't know that you just did 20 things of chesed that kept on pouring. They once made a video clip from some singer, I forgot who it was, that, where somebody dropped an orange. So somebody picked up an orange and they were like, smile. And then the person that got the orange, he walked a few steps and saw somebody else in need. And he says, well, I'm in a good mood because of that. And he kept on, and everything kept on pushing. So it's contagious. You do one good chesed, act of chesed, doesn't stop it there. It keeps on going. The opposite is also, you're upset, you cut somebody off, you curse somebody, God forbid, out. You do whatever you do something bad, that contagious also. So a person has to be careful. Their actions, is not just one. It keeps on building and building on it. Okay, so that's what I wanted to add on happiness. Now I wanted to go on on chesed. Now I wanted to go on other different things that a person could do to increase their happiness and hence success in life. And the next thing is emunah. If somebody has faith in God, automatically they're going to live a happier life. Happier and successful. In any which form of way. If a person understands the way that emunah works is that, how do you know when do you have to work and when do you have to have the emunah kick it in? The more emunah you have, the more faith that you have in God, the less that you have to do for that. I'm not saying you sit back and relax and play video games all day. I'm talking about you sitting and learning Torah and you have faith, God's going to give you the money. The more, it works hand in hand. The more faith that you have, the less that you have to do chase money and focus on the spiritual, obviously. So the Ibn Ezra says on a verse in Tehillim, the Tehillim, that's the verse, chapter 33, verse 4, he says the righteous people are always happy. You know why they're always happy? Because whether the good thing, whether the bad thing happens, they know everything's for the best. It says these people, nothing bothers them. They know everything. Even if it looks bad, it's really for the best. And, it's unfortunate because in fact, the Chazon Ish says, he says, whoever lives with constant awareness of God, of the Almighty, is a life of constant happiness. Right? Now it's unfortunate. Why do people get upset? People get upset because things don't go their way. Things don't go the way that they're supposed to, the things the way that they're planned. I'll tell you this crazy story that happened, and I'm sure it happens a lot more often than we actually know it. There was once a person by the name, his name was Heshi Blassman. He was a Holocaust survivor. He lost his wife, he lost his kids, he lost his parents, he lost everybody in the Holocaust. He made his way to America, the land of the paved with gold, or so he thought, and says, I'm going to come start my life again over here. So he goes, the one problem that he had is he didn't speak any English, right? He spoke Yiddish, spoke German, but no English. So he goes and he tries to get a job. He goes from one place to another place, and they're like, I'm sorry, if you don't speak English, you can't work here. How are you going to interact with customers? So he was down on his luck. He had no way of getting any parnasah, no way of making any money. And finally he's like, he sees an ad that a synagogue is looking for somebody to help, a shamash, someone to help and clean up after everyone leaves, and to come early in the morning and make sure everything's set up and, basically take care of the synagogue. He says, perfect. He says, you don't need to learn English for that. So he says he goes and he interviews for that job. And they're interviewing him and everything checks out. And finally, before they close it off, they're like, listen, do you speak English? And he's like, I happen to not speak English, but what does it matter? And they're like, no, I'm sorry. He says, but in order to get this job, you need to speak English. And he's like, why do we need to speak English? Because everyone here is Jewish. Everyone here speaks, what's the Jewish language in the early days in America? It was Yiddish. So he says, why do I need to speak English? I speak Yiddish and I can communicate that way. And they're like, no, you can't. Sometimes we get people that are, unaffiliated, and they're coming for let's say a simcha, for the Shabbat, and we need to have somebody be able to translate and to basically communicate with them. He says, we need somebody who can. If you don't speak English, I'm sorry. So the guy was, he was nothing doing, and he goes out on the street and he's thinking, what am I supposed to do? And he decides, listen, he says, the only place that I don't have to learn English is if I work for myself. So he says, he goes and he finds a friend. He says, listen, can I borrow some money? He borrowed a small sum of money, and he invested in a pushcart. So he basically sold stuff on the street. He bought stuff in a store, household items, and he sold it in the street. And he said, listen, I don't have to speak whatever language I want. I'm my own boss. And he goes and he happens to be pretty successful. In a short while, he paid back the loan. And after that, he was making enough money that he invested in another pushcart. So he bought 2 pushcarts. And eventually that was going well. And he sold the pushcarts and he bought a storefront. And again, it went really well. And he bought another store. And one thing led to another. And he kept on buying another store, and eventually he ended up buying factories. Eventually he had over 100 employees working for him. And he was a multimillionaire. And talking back in those days, right? So he had money. And eventually, he got a keen eye in business, and somebody decided that, gave him information that a possible merger between his company and another company that would possibly be very profitable. He looks over the numbers and he speaks to a few people, and he decides he wants to go through with the merger. And he speaks to the other, which is the new partners that are coming in, and they spoke to their company, and a few months of negotiation, and decided, sounds good. They're going to go through with the merger. And so they go to the big shot lawyers. They go to this huge tall skyscraper in Manhattan with this, fancy mahogany table and all the ambiance that's going on over there. And they're signing papers, and they're both coming with their teams. He's coming with his team of lawyers. He's coming with his team of lawyers, and they're signing papers. And eventually, his partner says, listen, he says, before you sign, I know you let your lawyer read it. I want you to read it also. I want to make sure everything's open on the table. So the guy goes to them. Hashi goes to them and says, listen, I would love to, but I don't read English. And they're like, you what? You don't? They're like, and everybody was silent. And so he starts smiling and says, okay. So he says, listen, I don't know how to read a word of English, and I'm a multimillionaire. He says, you know what I would have been had I known English? Right? Everyone would be like, oh, I'm a billionaire. He says, no. I would have been cleaning a synagogue. Right? That's what I would have been doing. He says, you know why I had to go into this? Because God closed off all doors for me. And he opened up only one door. And that door was my success. And he says, that's the only reason why I'm a millionaire. Because I didn't know. My failure was my biggest success. There are many people that God closes doors, and they're like, God, why? Why did this happen to me? Why? I just had this great business opportunity, and they closed the door, and you think everything failed. The little that you know that could have been your ticket, your golden ticket. That could have been your golden, the way to whatever it is that you wanted. There are many people in life that they get upset that things don't go their way. What they don't understand is that everything goes your way. There's a purpose, right? God is putting everything into play for you. He says the more you understand it, the more you feel that, the happier you'll be. The easier life will be for you. The easier you'll be able to live life. There's obviously the more spiritual a person is. I'm not saying Judaism. Obviously Judaism is the real religion and the only thing that's true out there. But shout out to all the Jews. Yeah. And it happens to be all the righteous Gentiles also. I mean, as long as they're serving the people that serve somebody that died, who knows how long ago. But whatever it is, the more spiritual a person is, the more happier they live life, right? And they made a study, and it wasn't a Jewish study. They made a study about people that believe in God versus atheists, and people that believe in God were happier people, right? Because even if bad things happen, they're always like, okay, God has a plan. There's a reason, there's a purpose for everything, and they push it off to that, and they were okay with that. And because of that, they lived the bad things were like, well, it's all right, it's not so bad, it's okay, God has a plan. They made a study, a very interesting study in Israel. First, they did a study of 124 countries to figure out who is the happiest country in the world. Right? Gallup did this survey. Right? It's a very famous survey, company. So they Israel was ranked number 7 out of the 124 countries. Now, first of all, if you look at Israel, right? Israel is not a rich. There's most of the people are living in poverty. Or below, there's a very short, the smallest percentage, maybe 16% or something, are living a very wealthy lifestyle. Most of Israel is not living, and they're living in cramped, the real estate there is crazy. Weather there is nice, I guess. But you think about it, like, how did we get to number 7? How did we get to number 7 of being happiness? And I want to say, not only is the number 7, it's really number 1. Who do you think they ask, are you happy? They didn't go to the yeshivot, where people are learning Torah, and be like, hey, by the way, you happy? No, they're learning Torah. They went to the beach. Right? Or they went to whoever was willing to answer their questions. Hey, can you do the survey? So it says, the reason is had they would have gone to the people learning Shabbat, they would have came up as number 1. He said, but you look at their life and you're like, okay, what is it that they're so happy about? When I was in Israel, and I think I mentioned this before, I was in Israel about 8 months ago, and when I was there, I stayed in a very religious community. And like any, I would say normal, but really not. While walking in the street, what do? Check your emails, right? I don't know if I told you this. In Japan, they have a texting lane, which means you're on your phone and it's arrows.
That's sick.
Yeah, one person this way, so you don't bump into people. You just keep on walking straight, and the other person works straight the other way. Right? B'ezrat Hashem will come to New York. Don't worry about it. So, you know how many accidents happen? People walk into. How many times have you seen? I'm sure you have seen people text and walk into branch. Well,
Especially now, there's a Pokemon thing.
I'm sure it's nothing. It's nothing. I don't know. I meant to look it up and I forgot to look it up. It was like Sweden or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. So, but I was there. I was in Israel. I was walking. I was on my phone checking my emails. Wasting time. Obviously, nothing that you couldn't have waited. And I stopped for a second. I look around and I realized I'm the only person on his phone, right? Because everybody else has a kosher phone, which is about the size of like this, right? It has a kosher stamp on it. All you can do it. You can't text. You can't. There's no internet. All you have is phone calls, right? So there's nothing for them to do. Maybe possibly play Snake if they have advanced version, right? They have nothing. So they're not on their phone. They're looking and they're just walking around enjoying. When was the last time you looked at a flower and be like, wow, that is a really cool flower? When you look at the clouds and be like, that's an awesome form of clouds. You need to enjoy a tree, right? Everybody's so involved in this that they forget about everything else that's happening in this world. And I'm walking in Israel and I'm seeing all this and I'm like, and I think I for sure said this before over here. He says, I saw kids playing with a tire. Right? And for a kid, right, if you have a tire in a hill, you're good. You don't need anything else. If you get in the tire, forget about it. Right? That's a bonus. Right? These kids were so happy playing with. Some of them are older kids who are so happy playing with a tire and a hill. And you have kids over here that are obese from eating just fast food all day and playing video games that they always complain to their parents is how come I don't have the newest video game? But I want to go outside, but give me a hoverboard so I don't have to actually walk, right? To God forbid do any exercise in my 300-pound obese 10-year-old, right? Yeah, and you think about it and you look at it. It's like we are so much technologically advanced. We give kids everything. Yet you look at the Israel where you have the people that are sitting and learning Torah and they're doing it. They are so much happier. I saw it with my own eyes. It's very simple. You could see somebody that's happy. You see a kid over here who was upset that they didn't get the new iPhone 6 Plus and they only got the iPhone 5. And meanwhile, the kid over there is happy that he has a stick and a ball. Right? I'm not talking about. I'm talking about a stick and a ball that probably doesn't have enough air in it. And they're happy. Right? And it makes you start thinking and be like, maybe we're doing something wrong and maybe they're doing something right. There's a very interesting, people think that, happiness is like a nice bonus in life. But it's actually not only it's a mitzvah. Not only it's a mitzvah, we'll soon see it's an obligation. There's a pasuk in Devarim, Deuteronomy 26, chapter 11. You should be happy with all the good that God has given you. Now, interesting how it said the pasuk with all that God has given you. There are many times, and there's a Medrash Rabbah that speaks about this Kohelet, that says that why are a lot of people not happy? Because they don't have everything they want yet, right? We know what the famous thing is. You have 100, you want 200, right? You have 1 million, you want 2 million. You have 2 million, you want 4 million. You have 4 million, you want 8 million, right? And so on and so forth. No one's ever satisfied with what they have. God says in the Torah, says, be happy with everything that you have now, right? There's a secret of being happiness. It says, if you're happy with what you have now, then you'll be content and you'll be happy, right? Right? Who is happy? Who is wealthy? Someone who's happy with what they have. There's more than that. Rabbi Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital was the primary disciple of the Arizal, which was like one of the greatest Kabbalists in the past 1,500 years. Right? He was the type of person that if he looks at you, he could tell you all your previous reincarnation, what your soul stems from, what you need to work on, like everything. He saw everything. So Rabbi Chaim Vital says that constantly feeling happy is one of the 4 basic character traits that are essential to acquire. Right? The other 3 are humility, appropriate silence, you have to know when to be quiet, and 4 is control of desires. Right? This is a Shalei Kedusha, if you want to look it up. So happiness is a very, very essential part to living life. And more than that is that we'll soon see that everything that I'm telling you, I don't know if you're going to pick up on it, is that all the things that the science says about being happy, and that the Torah said a long time ago. If you listen to the Torah, if you do all the mitzvot, you will be happy, right? It says in Mishlei, chapter 3, verse 17. If you live, the Torah ways are pleasant, right? They're not meant to be like hard and burdensome, this and that. It's pleasant. You just got to know how to do it right. Sometimes if you're working out and you could hurt yourself, but if you do it right, you could gain a lot bigger. There are many people that think they're religious, but they're not doing it right. They do the motions. What's the motions, right? If you ask, he says, by keeping Torah mitzvahs, really, then you'll be extremely happy. Then you'll have the people that will say, well, listen, I was religious, they went off the derech, and then they become religious, and I wasn't, I wasn't happy. So I guarantee you, all those people did not do religion right. They might have went through the motions. Dude, that's something else. A lot of people go through the motions. They go through the motions of being religious, doing all the Torah, doing all the listening, doing all the mitzvot, but they by no means were religious. Pretended to be religious, for sure. I know many people that have gone off the derech, unfortunately, and I've never met one that really kept the Torah inside, where it counts, right? Every mitzvah they do, you enjoy it. You pray, thinking, like everything you put an emphasis in it, not just whatever, praying and then you just going through all the motions of the. Yeah. Okay. So now it's very interesting because happiness. You go to somebody else and you'd be like, you can't, somebody who never had happiness before, you can't explain it. It's like an emotional state of being based on, physiological things that happen in your body. It's like explaining, somebody who has, put it this way, it's like explaining the color blue to a blind person. How do you do that? Being happy, there are many people that never realize what real happiness is. They've never realized what real happiness is. Listen to what a convert wrote about happiness. And now I want to quote this, like three lines. It says, being Jewish has given me happiness, is a woman convert. Being Jewish has given me happiness, not on the momentary, the fleeting kind, that comes with money, sports, and which passes swiftly, leaving empty feelings. The happiness that comes with Jewish living has to do with serenity of the soul, whole and satisfaction at the deepest level. Here you're talking about somebody who's not religious, not Jewish, came religious, and she says, now I know what happiness is. You want to know how to get real happiness? Listen to the Torah mitzvot, right? There's a reason for them. It's not just like random things. Hey, by the way, I want you to shake a palm tree, once a year. Why not? Yeah, I'll go live in a tent. There's a reason for everything, right? By the way, no chametz for 7-8 days, and yeah, enjoy. Good luck. Okay, buy some good. What is it called when someone's constipated? Buy some good laxatives. Enjoy, right? There's a reason for every single mitzvah, and it's for our benefit. Right, for our own benefit, both in this world and in the next world. The Rabbi Noach Weinberg says that there is there's nothing there's no such a happiness as pursuing the relationship with God, the relationship with Infinite. And more than that, Chazon Ish said in Emunah V'Bitachon, says God's clear knowledge of God's existence generate happiness. Right, and you see people that are the real big rabbis. There's no one happier than them. Right. There's no one happier than that. There is we spoke about last time. It says that not only is happiness a requirement, it's an obligation. Right? We spoke about last week is that you have to have you have an obligation of happiness, not only for yourself but for somebody else. Now there is an interesting story that it was in the Second World War, right, in the ghetto in the Holocaust. It says there was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Lubchansky. I might be pronouncing his name wrong. He was incarcerated in the ghetto, and when people looked at him, he was always happy. He was always with joy and happiness. And so another rabbi there, Rabbi Ephraim Ushri, he asked him. He says, in all this dim circumstances, how are you so happy? So the rabbi answered. He says, by nature, I am easily frightened, and I get very scared of everything. He says, but why should my nature of being scared hurt other people? He says, they're going to see me scared, they're going to get scared also. They're going to see me upset, they're going to get upset also. He says, it's my obligation to make sure that I'm happy so that they can be happy. Right? And this rabbi went and he forced himself to be happy so that other people shouldn't get upset because when they see him upset. This is what this is how somebody who cares for other people. There is and this is, by the way, this is obvious. When you're with a happier person, you're happier, right? And this is why also very interesting. It's a very interesting observation. If let's say there's one person drunk, and they're like all crazy and like doing all wild stuff, you realize everybody around them are all loosed up also. They didn't drink anything, but they're like all they're all get in the same sort of light sort of environment. Now, what is that? They didn't drink. The answer is because it's contagious, right? Somebody's going in the mood, is always depressed, always upset, always angry. He's going to make everybody else angry. Someone's happy, he's going to make everybody else happy, right? It's very important. It's not only your right to be happy for yourself. You already have an obligation for everybody around you to be happy, especially if you're married. You walk home from a hard day of work, right, and your wife has to deal with all the anger and frustration that you have to let out on her, right? It's not, you have an obligation to be happy for everybody. The Baal Shem Tov furthermore says, he says that God put you into this world for a certain purpose. He says, by you becoming depressed and sad, which means that you're not happy with God's reason of putting you in here. He says, you don't think God has the best for you? He says, God put you here for a purpose. He says, this is why it's an obligation. The person has to always be happy. He says, more than that, he says that if you see a Jew, if a Jew is happy, it does something called the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctifying of God's name. Person, oh, look at this Jew, so happy, so nice. As opposed to you see a Jew who's depressed, is upset, is sad. It's like, oh, look at these. Nothing's going for them, right? They can't. The religion, everything is, and it makes a chilul Hashem, makes a desecrating of God's name, right? A person has to understand that it doesn't. Everything affects more than one person. People think that only affects me and nothing else. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, writes. He says in Ruach Chaim, he says, when you're feeling joy, you can gain so much more out of 1 hour of learning Torah than many hours of learning it in sadness. And more than that, let's say the Arizal, which I guess I put it down later, but I'm bringing it out. The Arizal that was asked, and I'm trying to remember the... So the Arizal said, he told his disciple, he said, you know how I reached such a high level? Because I did all the mitzvot with happiness. So the secret for me getting to such a high level is because all the mitzvot I did was with extreme happiness. Okay, so now I want to speak about there's a law. It's called Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which means you have to love your friend like yourself, right? Which brings to mind of the question of suicide. I don't know if I spoke about it over here before. Right? Suicide is a very, very big sin in the Torah. So much so is that you don't get buried in a Jewish cemetery. Now, the obvious question is why do we care so much if someone committed suicide? If somebody wants to commit suicide, whatever. What does it bother with anybody else? And the answer is, there is a law. Rabbi Akiva says, you have to love your friend like yourself. This is an important rule in the Torah, and not a foundation in a rule of Torah. If you don't love yourself, how are you supposed to love somebody else? If a person commits suicide, which is obviously doesn't love himself, then he missed the Torah. He missed the whole idea of it. He missed the whole thing of it. More than that, there's an organization called the World Health Organization. In 2006, it was reported that nearly 1 million people take their own lives every year. So 1 million people commit suicide every year, right? They made some sort of calculation, which is like every 40 seconds someone's committed suicide, which is crazy. That's an unbelievable. And more than that, in 1998, the World Health Organization they ranked suicide as the 12th leading cause of death worldwide. Wow. In some countries, it was higher than homicides, which means is, and listen to this is crazy. There were more people killing themselves than killing other people. Isn't that crazy? There are more people that they committed suicide than people that murdered other people, which is crazy. We're living in a world over here that the whole purpose, what everyone strives for, is success and happiness, and you have all this suicide, all this depression. What's going on? So there's a very important thought Rabbi Yehoshua Zitron brings down. He says that a person is people. Why do people live with depression and lack of happiness? Is because they feel like this is it. They cannot get any better. They feel that this is where they are, and they get used to it. They get used to feeling, down, depressed, and they feel this is regular life, right? This is the problem with, let's say, spouses are in an abusive relationship. They feel like that's it. There's nothing else out. This is what it is, and they stick through it the whole thing, and they live a miserable life, right? People are depressed for whatever reasons, and they feel they can't change. There's no way that this person could ever be happy, right? I know a few people like that their husbands left them, and the kids are, and they just gave up. They gave up on life, right? So there's a very important rule, which is obviously very obvious, is never give up. And I'll tell you, there's an interesting experiment that was done. A marine biologist did an interesting experiment. They put a shark in a large pool, and while the shark was swimming in the pool, they put some fish as like bait. And the second the shark saw the fish, it just went and like devoured them like piranha style. It's like within a few seconds it was gone. Then they waited till the shark was hungry again. Then they put a fiberglass in the middle, and they put again, which is like a see-through type of strong material. And then they put this fish, this feed-ear fish, on the other side of it. And the shark saw it, so it started racing at it. But then its head-on went into the fiberglass, and it started banging against the fiberglass. And it kept on trying to go all around, and for like an hour it was trying to get through the fiberglass. And it saw it didn't, nothing was doing. So they took out the fish and they waited. A short while later, they tried the same experiment. They kept the fiberglass in there, and they put the fish back again. Again, the shark saw it, and went and attacked head off first, and tried to, eat the fish, but again, he kept on bumping into all the fiberglass and wasn't able to get through. They did this a few times. Every time they took it, they let the shark rest, and every time they put it back in again. Eventually, the shark started to try to get the fish less and less. Right? Eventually, it started only for a half hour. Then it tried to get it for 15 minutes. Eventually, for 5 minutes. Eventually, it tried once or twice, didn't work, swam away. Right? And then, what they decided to do is, the final thing that they did is they took the fiberglass out, and they put the fish in there. And they saw that the shark didn't even attack the fish. Didn't even attack the fish. Why? Because it thought, I can't. It thought, there's no way I could do it. There are many people in life that they think that they can't do something. They can't do it because they feel that there's this fiberglass blocking them. And meanwhile, there's nothing there. You just walk straight through. And they don't realize they put this fiberglass on themselves. There's a person should never give up. Happiness is achievable by everyone and anyone, right? And a person has to go, and if it's harder, you have to work for it. There's a very interesting story I saw that there was once a group of kids that did very poorly on a test. So the rabbi of the class, he decided he knew this this ranch owner, was a very wealthy guy. He says, let's go on a field trip. So they take him on the field trip. And this guy, they see there's hundreds of acres of land, and there's horses everywhere, and this guy lives in a mansion. Everything is amazing. The kids are having a great time all day. At the end of the day, they had a little barbecue, and the ranch owner said, "Hey, I want to tell you kids a story." So the reason why I told you, Rabbi, to bring you here today is as follows. He says, when I was 12 years old, he says his father was a horse trainer. So they kept on traveling from place to place in order to wherever business took him. And they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have a lot of, and they kept on moving and, kept on having to make new friends and going to new schools. And it was very hard on him. And one day, his teacher said he wants everybody to write an essay on their dreams of life. So this kid, he said, he really wanted to do really well in this essay. So he put a lot of work and effort to it. He thought about it. He's like, I'm going to have a 200-acre ranch. I'm going to have a huge palace on this ranch. I'm going to have tons of horses and tons of this. And he put a lot of effort into this. And he gives it into the teacher, thinking for sure he's going to get an A. This is an amazing report. And the next day, the teacher gives him back the report with a big fat F on it. Nice and red and straight. Makes your kids ego nice and. I don't know where teachers decide to put in blood ink. By the way, you failed. Why is it got to be scared of the kids? But in any case, he says, why did you fail me? He says, I've worked so hard on this. And the teacher says because it's impossible for you to happen. You come from a poor family. I'll reconsider. Give me a realistic dream. He says, this dream, you're really dreaming. I want something that's realistic. So the kid felt bad. He takes his report home and he thinks it over at his house. He takes out a pen and paper, thinking that he's going to write another report. He really wanted to do well. And then, he suddenly gets filled up with fire. And he's like, no. He puts the paper down. The next day, he goes back to the teacher and he gives him the paper bag. He says, you keep the F. I'll keep my dreams. Right? And he says, you might be wondering, and you probably would have guessed about it, but that was me. Right? And I want to show you. And he brought him to the back room, and he had a little report card that was filled up there with a big F on his dream. And he told each kid, says, you might be going through a hard time in school, but never give up. Never give up on your dreams because everything is attainable, and I'm proof of it. I am living my dream right now. People think that it's impossible for me to become religious. It's impossible. I can't. It's too hard. It's too hard. There's no such thing. If you want it hard enough, you will get it. Anything in life, if you want it hard enough, you will get it. Right? The only problem is you don't want it hard enough. You want to be religious, you want to keep Shabbat, you want to keep kosher, you want to do all these things, you can do it. The person should never say, it's impossible, it's too hard, my wife, my this, my mother, my this, my kids, that. No, all nonsense. Anything is possible, anything is achievable. Which brings us to the next thing that brings also success is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is very, very important in life. If you ever realize, and this is a very interesting thought to have, somebody goes on vacation, right? He goes on vacation and he's, he spends all day hiking, whatever it is, right? And he goes to sleep at 2 a.m. And the next day they have this crazy trip that's going on. They're going kayaking down, whatever. There's something that he loves. And the thing is that they have to wake up at 6 a.m., which means he's going to get maximum 4 hours of sleep. So he hits his head on the table. The alarm wakes off. He's out of the bed. He's jumping. He's already half dressed before he shuts off the alarm. He's got all the energy, and he goes throughout the entire day, able to accomplish everything. Right? Same scenario in work or in school or learning Torah, whatever it is. Right? He goes to sleep at 2 a.m. He has to wake up at 6. How does that happen? First of all, snooze for an hour. Right? And then finally he gets up. He needs 14 coffees. Right? Any which way he can insert caffeine into him. And what's the difference? He slept both the same exact amount. The difference is how much enthusiasm you have in life. If you're enthusiastic, if you have the happiness in life, you have a drive. If you have a drive, you're going to have so much. You're going to be able to accomplish so much. Success is those two that have that enthusiasm, have that drive. You see all these rabbis, they said that they learn for so many hours. They have the drive. They don't need to sleep. They don't need to sleep. They sleep for 2, 3, 4 hours a night, and they're good. Right? Yeah. Other people need 10 hours of sleep, and even then they need 4 coffees just to get them through the day. Is there people who lack drives, right? A person has to have a drive in life. That person has to have a purpose in life. A purpose. If the purpose is going towards God and going towards spirituality, your enthusiasm, you're gonna get some fire. Your life is gonna be a different life. The next thing is to act happy, right? Many science already says, does this. I even heard. I gave this class once, and they one of the people that were in the class, they said, if you expand, that brings happiness. Contract is sadness, and that's why he says the science says if you don't feel happy, pretend to be happy. Smile. I've tried it. It works. You have a bad day, smile. You look like a weirdo. Right? Smile. But in a few minutes, you feel a little better. When you smile, when you're expanding, you feel happier. And this is what science says recently. But this already came Ramchal, right? Ramchal already said this in Miselah Yesharim chapter 7. It says an external act of enthusiasm affects our inner feelings of joy. Which means that even if you're tired, even pretend to be happy, pretend to be energized, pretend to do all these things, it will come to you. You will get that. You will get that energy. You will get that enthusiasm. You'll get that joy. So this is probably one of the most important things. The next thing is, do not compare yourself to others, which I think is a big, big problem in practically every community that I've ever been to. But first we have to start with media. So there's something very interesting that I asked this also to women. How come women like when there are pretty women in movies? Right? Why is it? I understand men, and not Jewish obviously, they're watching movies, they want a pretty woman because it's eye candy and they enjoy it, whatever, yada, yada, yada. But why do women care? And I asked this to women. I said, why? I gave this class to women. I said, why is it that you enjoy... First of all, is it true? And they all agreed. It's true. They enjoy it when there's a pretty woman. All right, one answer said, because it's pleasant to look at, or another one. None of them gave the answer that I'm going to give. And none of them disagreed with it, right? And this is the answer is, when you're watching a movie, a non-Jew is watching a movie, right? So they are going and they're in the movie. They're in the movie. They feel, why do they cry? Why are they happy? Why are they excited? Why are they sad? Why are they scared? Because they're the main actor. Subconsciously, you're in the movie, right? The woman gets all emotional. Why? And in some way, it happens to her. She sees a pretty woman, and she associates that. Oh, I'm very pretty, so and they associate it together. If you realize this even more, you look at, let's say, you look at people that are after an action movie, right? Let's say some kung fu movie. You go and you see what are all the men doing, right? They can be 500 pounds. They're like kung fuing each other into what are you doing? They're watching a parkour movie, right? And they're jumping over gates and fences. Why? Because they got into the movie. They were so into it, right? Also, you see, if you go afterwards, especially with men, let's say they watch a movie about car racing, something fast and something, they went
to race on the streets.
The second they could be driving a 1990 Corolla, right?
You're the best.
And it's not even stick, but they're pretending as they're like little kids pretending to be that. Why? Because they lived the movie. You lived inside the movie. Now what happens when you're living this movie, right? You see this crazy movie, this guy has all the pretty woman and he's driving all the fancy cars and he has all the action and he has all the beautiful houses. And then you finish the movie, the lights go on and you're like, oh, it's a pretty boring life I have. I sit at a desk all day, When was the last time I had a car chase, When was the last time a woman fought for me or whatever? People think of it like, they compare themselves to what they just seen and they see they're lacking. And not only that, they're like, wow, look how exciting that person's life is. Look how pretty she is, the girl thinks. And meanwhile, people are not understanding everything is fake. Everything is special effects, makeup. You shouldn't see this, but they've showed people before makeup and after makeup, right? And I said already that I think makeup should be illegal in certain ways. It's just like completely somebody else. You can make a horse look like like the queen of the world. Miss America, right? What people go and people change and people see this and people think that this is what life is. That's a problem that when men don't watch their eyes and they see everything that they look at everything that they're not supposed to look at. And now it's a summer. Now it's a time when people have to watch their eyes. They look at and they think about, okay, awesome. Look how this woman is very pretty. This woman is very pretty. And in the end, they only want to marry a 10 model, right? Meanwhile, they're at 4 at best. And they think that they deserve the best. Why? Because nonstop they're looking at everybody else and they think this is what's normal. And they think this is what I'm going to get. And in the end, these are people that don't get unfortunately married. The problem is that you live in a fake world. We live in a world that's fake and people are looking at everywhere else. And that is by no means conducive to any happiness. People think, okay, I'll watch a nice comedy movie and I'll feel happy. By all means, no. Maybe temporarily, yes. While you're in the movie, then you come back to reality. It's like an escape from reality. It's a drug in a very, very non-drug type of way, if I could say that. So, there's besides that. Let me first of all, the Rabbi Yehuda Levi in Sefer HaKuzri says that it's an obligation that we have to be happy with what we have. It's a mitzvah. We have to be happy with what we have, right? We're looking at all these movies and saying, oh, how come I don't have an Aston Martin? How come I don't have a Ferrari? Where's my yacht? Yeah, you look at all these things and you want all these things. It says you're just taking away only from yourself. You're taking away the happiness from yourself. You have to be happy with what you have. So this is very interesting is why there are certain, and I also had, the girls were able to agree with this, there are certain magazines that what they do is, it's complete lie, like it's like, forget about Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is true. Completely non-true. The whole entire magazine bashing celebrities. This one's getting divorced, this one lost all their money, this one did this one did that. And people buy it, they're in business, and they know that it's fake. They read something that's fake, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Why? You know, it's like reading something like, hey, this is something that's never going to happen. Oh, that's an interesting story. But why do they read that? Because they feel good. Feel, the big actors, they just lost $10 million, or she just gained 500 pounds. The girl feels good by just gaining 5 pounds, right? They're getting divorced, they're not so happy, so they're feeling better. A person feels happy when the other people are not doing well. They're looking at all these stars and how much amazing life they have, and they feel bad with their own life. They buy these magazines, so they feel better about themselves. But again, this is not the way for true happiness. You're going to base your happiness over somebody else's misery. So, the number one thing is a person has to make sure you don't make your happiness contingent on others. Right? A person has to base it, happiness. Happiness comes from within, not from without. Bringing in, let me get more stuff. That's going to bring me happiness. There are many people, which relates to social media. There are many people that are I have like 10 minutes. I'll be done, but whatever. Yeah. There are many people that they have. But I have to go. There are many people that they plaster on social media everything they. In their private life, right? It was very interesting, so first of all, people have to understand that some people appear happy, but inside they're not happy, right? I've spoken to many people. They're smiles all day, cracking jokes all day. Inside, they're dying inside. They're depressed like crazy. They're showering, life is amazing and life is that, and inside they're really hurting. They're really, this is a big problem with social media. There was Rabbi Yosef Horowitz, right, founder of the Nevardek. He was once walking with a student, and he saw it was a couple, and a couple were like joking, and they were like, looked like they're having a great time. And as they were passing by, and the rabbi told the student, he says, you see that couple over there? He says, I know nothing about them, but I can tell you right now that they have a lot of problems that they're trying to cover up. You have many times that you see people on social media, right? I have the best husband in the entire world. He just bought me flowers. How many likes am I going to get? Right? How many thumbs up am I going to get? Right? And they post it on the entire world. Oh, my husband just took me to this amazing dinner. Right? My wife just made me this crazy steak. And you take pictures of it in the right lighting. Right? And you post it on social media and see how many people are going to be jealous. Oh, yeah, I got 40 likes on this one. 150 on this one. Oh, you see that? Well, that was a good night. You base it off on somebody else's on desire and like. The people that do that do not have there's no reason for somebody to scream out to the world, as much as contrary to the popular belief, your love for your wife. You should feel that. Absolutely. You should feel that you're the luckiest person in the world. There's no need for you to splatter it all over social media. Right? Besides the fact is like, you never know. Maybe somebody who just lost their husband is reading that. Right? And then she starts crying, oh, my husband used to do that for me. He used to buy me flowers. Right? Or somebody who's not married. Why do you got to cause other people's problems by flaunting your blessings over everybody else? Right? Besides the fact that it doesn't show that you have so much blessing when you're posting everything on social media. Right? There are certain things that are very important to be kept private. The next thing is to be optimistic. There are some people that if they think something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Right? They don't go on dates. Why? They're burnt out. I can't. It's too much. I don't want to get hurt again. Be like, people. There's a certain saying. You only live once. Right? The non-Jews, terrible saying. Absolutely no clue why. So you only live once. Oh. Jump over bridge. Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's why you shouldn't jump over bridge, because you only live once, right? I don't know how people mix the whole thing up on the other way around. But if you think about it, it says you do only live once. So take a leap of faith. So if you get hurt, come on, you get up. Love is important. You got to get married. You got to do that. A lot of people refuse. They're not optimistic. They're all pessimistic, and everything is going to happen bad. It will happen bad. There was once a girl. I love this little parable. There was once a girl who had 2 apples. Her mother gave her 2 apples. She was holding the 2 apples, nice, clean, not bitten. And her mother comes and says, little girl, can you please give mommy an apple? So she looks at the 2 apples. She looks at her mother for a second. She takes a bite out of one, swallows it, quickly takes a bite out of the other one. And the mother was like, oh, no, she didn't. She's going to get the, And then, luckily, the mother waited. And the little girl says, here, mommy, take this one. It's sweeter. Right? There are many times that things happen in life and be like, God, why do you hate me? Why? What do I do? I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to keep Shabbat. I'm trying to do kosher. I'm trying to do all these things. Why does this happen? You don't even just know that God just tasted the apple for you and says, no, this is not a good door for you. This one is sweeter. Go over here. What you think as something bad is really something that's very good. The next thing is exercise. And I know I'm rushing through a little bit. I want to finish up. In a few minutes we'll be done. exercise. It is very important when you exercise. It's scientifically proven. It says you release positive endorphins, and it makes you a happier person. And they made a study of this with depressed people, and they split them into 3 groups. Number 1, they gave Zoloft, an antidepressant. Number 2, they gave Zoloft and exercise. Number 3 was just exercise.
You said what last?
I said.
Yeah, last class.
So no, that was with kindness. This is with exercise. That was the same experiment, just with doing chesed. This is this is with kindness. They did kindness. They did the exercise. It says the first one with just the medication, they were baseline. The people that did exercise and they had the medication, they were on a much higher level. And matching to par with them were the people that didn't take any medications and just did the exercise. Now you have to ask, well, if these people are depressed, how is it that they didn't even need the medication? And the answer is that if you take a medication, what's making you feel better? The medication. But if you're doing exercise, you're making yourself feel better. And that itself is worth so much. It says, no, I feel better because I worked on myself. You're not just popping pills.
Mental.
It's mental, yeah. Well, depression is also a mental, So they felt that they got happier because they were working on themselves. They did something, which also brings us to the next point of the happiness. We're probably going to go through like 10 to 15 things of happiness throughout these 2 classes. The next thing is to complete something. It's very important. There's a Mishnah in Ketubot, right? Chapter 5, Mishnah 4. Living without any goals breeds instability. A person has to have goals in life. Yeah, let's say you're learning, right? There are many people, unfortunately, when they start learning, they're learning Torah. They'll open a book and they'll never finish it. They'll go to the next one, and they go to the next one. It's very important to finish something. You feel accomplished when you finish something. Also, if you start a project in your home, finish it. It brings a certain happiness when you complete it. You see the full product. You see the full thing, right? Don't, paint the whole thing and miss like one little street. Complete it A to Z, it will bring you some happiness. Additionally, the next thing is people have to change their vocabulary, right? If someone's asking you, how's life, how's everything? It's alright, it's good, right? Then that's what life is. Alright, good. Someone asks you, how's life? You say, it's amazing, it's awesome, it's unbelievable. You're convincing yourself life is, even though you might have not had a great day, but say it, because it's going to make yourself, it's going to change your internal feelings and how you feel, by just saying it. And the proof is, you could try it. If someone gets angry, someone's really furious, say to yourself, I'm a little annoyed. Instead of saying I'm furious, I'm angry, I can't believe it, say I'm a little annoyed, and you'll see how it just went down a little bit. Try the next time, and then you'll see it'll work for the other way around also. There is also an important idea that it's there in the time of halfway through last century, right, in the 1950s and something like after that. There were many people that were brought up religious and they did not become religious. So they brought it up to Moshe Feinstein, a big rabbi, and what's going on over here? Why are so many people that are brought up religious are becoming not religious, right? They complained on the Holocaust, but Moshe Feinstein said as follows, said something amazing. He says, you have a responsibility to show your kids that being a Jew is good, being a Jew is happy. In the olden days, they wouldn't be able, they would work for a few days, and then come Saturday, come Shabbat, they have to work on Shabbat. If you don't work Shabbat, don't bother coming in Sunday. So what did the parents come in? They came in Yiddish saying, es ist schwer zu sein ein Yid. In English, it means it's very tough to be a Jew. When you're sitting there, this just reminds me. There was once back then there was also like a story happened a while ago. The kindergarten teacher decided that this one's going to play daddy, this one's going to play mommy, and they're all going to pretend what's going on in their Shabbat tables. So they see the kid who's pretending to be Tati, like the daddy, and he's walking in there. He's walking, like his belly sticking out. He's walking over there. He sits down and he's like, oh, what a hard week. This little kid, right? And the teacher's looking at me and be like, this is what he sees at home. He says, oh, what a hard week. Oh, it's so tough to be a Jew. If a kid sees, oh, it's so hard to be a Jew, can't keep this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, who you expect the kid to stay Jewish? It's like, why? He sees that your life is miserable. So it's your opportunity, right, to show your kids being Jewish is the most amazing, awesome thing possible. It's awesome. Shabbat is awesome. Kosher is awesome. The fact that I can't eat that is amazing. Right? You don't think of it as like, oh no, I wish we could, son, but it's not kosher, so we're gonna have to starve a little bit. No, you got to play it the positive way. So you play the positive way, your kid's gonna love Judaism. The kids live by example. Very important. There's a mitzvah. It says in Tehillim, chapter 100, verse 2. It says, "Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha." You have to serve God with happiness. It's an obligation, and more than that, the Rambam Maimonides says in Hilchot Lulav and on Sukkot, he says that he says it very interesting. He says one must allow himself to feel happiness when doing a mitzvah, and one who holds back is unaccountable for his lack of joy. Which means is it's the mitzvah you have to have happiness with it. It's like you're getting right now. You're sitting over here. Right? I know it's late. We're running a little bit late. Every minute that you're here, you're getting endless reward. You should be happy that we're running a little bit overboard, right? Almost finished. So there's even the in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Yehoshua Zitron, he says that when you're doing a mitzvah and you're happy, that itself is a mitzvah. That itself is a mitzvah that you're doing. Okay, so now the final thing is what I want to speak about is a grudge, but it's another story. It's about 5-10 minutes. Should we continue next week, or should we finish it with next week? Okay, so any questions?
No, it's actually.
See me trying to